Chapter 1. Everyone can perform miracles. An expectant father was pacing up and down the hall in front of the operating room at the hospital, waiting to hear whether it was a boy or a girl. The door opened. 2 nurses came out and passed by the waiting father without looking in his direction. Then the doctor came to the door, hesitated a moment, and motioned the impatient father to enter. "Before you go in," the doctor began, "I must prepare you for a shock. It's a boy and he was born without ears. He hasn't the slightest sign of ears, and of course he will be deaf all his life." "He may have been born without ears," the father exclaimed, "but he will not go through life deaf." "Now don't become excited," returned the doctor, "but you may as well prepare yourself to accept the conditions as they are, not as you wish them to be. Medical science has known of other cases like that of your son, but not one of the children born in his condition ever learned to hear. Doctor, I have great respect for your skill as a physician, but I am also a doctor in a certain sense, for I have discovered a powerful remedy sufficient for human needs in practically every circumstance. The first step one must take in applying this remedy is to refuse to accept as inevitable any circumstance one does not desire, and I am notifying you, here and now, that I shall never accept my son's affliction as something which cannot be corrected." The doctor made no reply, but the look of astonishment on his face clearly said, "You poor fellow, I feel sorry for you, but you'll find out there are some circumstances of life which one is forced to accept." He took the father by the arm and walked into the room where the mother and child awaited him, turned back the spread, and stood silently while the father looked at what the doctor sincerely believed to be one of those circumstances of life which one is forced to accept. Time moved onward rapidly. 25 years later, another doctor smilingly emerged from his laboratory with some X-rays in his hands. "Miraculous," he exclaimed. "I have X-rayed this young man's head from every possible angle, and I see no evidence that he possesses any form of hearing equipment. Yet my tests show that he has 65% of his normal hearing capacity." The doctor was a well-known ear specialist of New York City, and the X-rays he held in his hands were made of the head of the young man, who doubtless would have gone through life deaf had it not been for the intervention of a father who refused to accept that condition and who did something to cause nature to correct it. I can vouch for the correctness of these statements, because I am the father who refused to accept as incurable even so great an affliction as that of being born without ears. For almost 9 years, I devoted a major portion of my time to the application of a power which finally restored my son 65% of his normal hearing. It was sufficient to enable him to go through the grade school, high school, and college with grades that equal the best of students. And it was sufficient to enable him to adjust himself to life so as to live normally and without inconveniences or embarrassment, such as most deaf persons suffer. How is this miracle performed? Who or what did the performing, and what took place inside the head of the child born without ears, which enable him to develop sufficient hearing capacity to carry him through life satisfactorily? These same questions were put to the ear specialist. Here is his reply. Without doubt, the psychological directives the father gave through the child's subconscious mind influenced nature to improvise some sort of a nerve system which connected the brain with the inner walls of the skull and enabled the boy to hear by what is now known as bone conduction. It is hoped that by the time the reader shall have finished reading this volume, the exact nature of the miracle which saved a child from going through life as a deaf person will be revealed. That is the major purpose in writing the book. The author has been aided by this miracle ever since he first became conscious of it, when he was quite a young man. It has helped him to master fear, superstition, ignorance, and poverty, the 4 enemies of mankind to which so many people yield without a fight because they do not understand how to apply the miracle in refusing to accept from life that which they do not want. The exact nature of the miracle is something one person cannot describe to another until that person has been mentally conditioned to receive it. For this reason, it may be necessary for the reader to read and analyze all of the subsequent chapters of this book before he is conditioned to receive the full meaning of the miracle. Some very definite clues have been described in this chapter, but they may not be sufficient to reveal the supreme secret by which one may successfully reject from life that which one does not desire. This secret is worthy of earnest search, because it is the master key that will unlock the doors to multiple blessings for all who possess it, including the mastery of dread of dental and medical surgery. The mental attitude in which you read this book will determine, to a large extent, the time and the place in the book where the secret may be revealed to you. Therefore, let us turn our attention to some of the profound potentials of a positive mental attitude. If you have your mental attitude under control, you may control almost all other circumstances which affect your life, including your fears and worries of every nature whatsoever. How important is mental attitude? Let's analyze the part mental attitude plays in our lives, and we shall learn how important it is. Your mental attitude is the major factor which attracts people to you in a spirit of friendliness, or repels them, according to whether your attitude is positive or negative, and you are the only person who can determine which it shall be. Mental attitude is an important factor in the maintenance of sound physical health. All doctors know, and most of them will admit, that the patient's mental attitude is more important in curing physical ailments than any other single factor. Mental attitude is a determining factor, perhaps the most important factor as to what results one gets from prayer. It has long been known that when one goes to prayer in a mental attitude swayed by fear, doubt, and anxiety, only negative results are experienced. Only the prayers which are backed by a mental attitude of profound faith can be expected to bring positive results. Your mental attitude while driving an automobile on the public highway determines very largely whether you are a safe driver or a traffic hazard endangering your own life and the lives of others. Most automobile accidents are said to happen because of drunken driving or anger or some form of over-anxiety or worry on the part of the drivers. Your mental attitude determines to a large extent whether you find peace of mind or go through life in a state of frustration and misery. Mental attitude is the warp and the woof of all salesmanship, regardless of what one is selling, merchandise, personal services, or any commodity. A person with a negative mental attitude can sell nothing. He may take an order from someone who buys something from him, but no selling was done. The transaction was entirely on of buying. Perhaps you have seen this truth demonstrated in many retail stores, where the minds of the salespeople clearly are not directed toward pleasing the customers. Mental attitude controls, very largely, the space one occupies in life, the success one achieves, the friends one makes, and the contributions one makes to posterity. It would be no great overstatement of the truth if we said that mental attitude is everything. Mental attitude is the means by which one may condition his mind to go through surgery or dentistry without fear of physical pain. The means by which this can be accomplished are clearly described in subsequent chapters. There are some who believe that one's mental attitude, while occupying the physical body during life, influences what happens to one after death. There is no positive proof of this theory except that it is obviously logical. Lastly, the most convincing evidence of the importance of mental attitude is the fact that it is the one and only thing over which anyone has been given the complete, unchallengeable privilege of personal control. We cannot control the thoughts or the actions of other people. We cannot control either our coming into or our going out of life, but we do have the inexorable privilege of controlling every thought we release from our minds, from the time we begin to think to the time that life is ended. Here, then, is the most profound, the most significant of all facts which influence an individual's life. It is logical that by giving every person the complete control over his thinking, the Creator intended this to be a priceless asset, and it is precisely that, because the mind is the one and only means by which an individual may plan his own life and live it as he chooses. Henley, the poet, must have understood this great truth when he wrote the lines, "I am the master of my fate, I am the captain of my soul." Truly, we may become the captains of our worldly destiny, precisely to the extent that we take possession of our minds and direct them to definite ends through control of our mental attitudes. Mental attitude can be negative or positive. Only a positive mental attitude pays off in the affairs of our everyday living. So let us see what is, and how we may get it and apply it in the struggle for the things and circumstances we desire in life. A positive mental attitude has many facets and innumerable combinations for its application in connection with every circumstance which affects our lives. First of all, a positive mental attitude is the fixed purpose to make every experience, whether it is pleasant or unpleasant, yield some form of benefit, which will help us to balance our lives with all the things which lead to peace of mind. It is the habit of searching for the seed of an equivalent benefit, which comes with every failure, defeat, or adversity we experience, and causing that seed to germinate into something beneficial. Only a positive mental attitude can recognize and benefit by the lessons or the seed of an equivalent benefit which comes with all unpleasant things that one experiences. A positive mental attitude is the habit of keeping the mind busily engaged in connection with the circumstances and things one desires in life, and off the things one does not desire. The majority of people go all the way through life with their mental attitudes dominated by fears and anxieties and worries over circumstances which somehow have a way of making their appearance sooner or later. And the strange part of this truth is that these people often blame other people for the misfortunes they have thus brought upon themselves by their negative mental attitudes. The mind has a definite way of clothing one's thoughts in appropriate physical equivalents. Think in terms of poverty, and you will live in poverty. Think in terms of opulence, and you will attract opulence. Through the eternal law of harmonious attraction, one's thoughts always clothe themselves in material things appropriate unto their nature. A positive mental attitude is the habit of looking upon all unpleasant circumstances with which one meets as merely opportunities for one to test his capacity to rise above them by searching for that seed of an equivalent benefit and putting it to work. A positive mental attitude is the habit of evaluating all problems and distinguishing the difference between those one can master and those one cannot control. The person with a positive mental attitude endeavors to solve the problems he can control, and so relates himself to those he cannot control that they do not influence his mental attitude from positive to negative. A positive mental attitude helps one to make allowances for the frailties and weaknesses of other people without becoming shocked by their negative-mindedness or being influenced by their way of thinking. A positive mental attitude is the habit of acting with definiteness of purpose, with full belief in both the soundness of that purpose and one's ability to achieve it. It is the habit of going beyond the letter of one's responsibility and rendering more and better service than one is obligated to render, and doing it in a friendly, pleasing manner. It is the habit of choosing a definite goal and marching forward toward its attainment without hesitating because of either commendation or condemnation. It is the habit of looking for the good qualities in other people and expecting to find them, at the same time being prepared to recognize unfavorable qualities without being shocked into a negative state of mind. It is the habit of facing all the facts which affect one's life, both the pleasant and the unpleasant, and keeping a cool head when unpleasant emergencies arise. It is recognition of the universal power of infinite intelligence and the knowledge that it can be appropriated and directed to the attainment of definite ends through the medium of faith. A positive mental attitude is the chief medium by which Alcoholics Anonymous has helped countless numbers of men and women to cure themselves of alcoholism. And it is also the basis of cure for the habit of excessive smoking. It is the medium of all forms of mind conditioning for whatsoever purposes, including the elimination of all types of fear. All habits, good or bad, voluntary or involuntary, are established by one's mental attitude. It is the medium by which one may transmute unpleasant habits and circumstances into some form of benefit. A positive mental attitude is the sole medium by which one may exercise the inherent right to maintain complete control over his mind without the help or hindrance from anyone. And it is the means by which stumbling blocks may be transmuted into stepping stones of progress in every calling. Mental attitude reveals itself from one person to another, without spoken words, signs, or actions, by the medium of telepathy. Therefore, it is contagious. A person's mental attitude while eating aids digestion or retards it, and a negative mental attitude can paralyze the digestive forces altogether. The mental attitude of a public speaker often determines how his speech is interpreted, even more effectively than the words he uses. Again, the mental attitude of a writer while he is writing is conveyed to the reader, behind the lines of his writing. By the proper conditioning and control of the mental attitude, one may condition his mind to meet any sort of unpleasant circumstance without becoming upset by it, including even the emergency of death of loved ones. Mental attitude is a two-way gate across the pathway of life, which can be swung one way into success and the other into failure. The tragedy is that most people swing the gate in the wrong direction. The patient's mental attitude is the doctor's best aid, or his greatest hindrance in the treatment of physical ailments, depending upon whether the attitude is positive or negative. From the statements of known facts, one can easily understand why mental attitude is everything, because it influences every experience with which we meet, and it is under our complete control at all times. What a profound thought it is to recognize that the one thing which can give us success or bring us failure, bless us with peace of mind, or curse us with misery all the days of our lives, is simply the privilege of taking possession of our own minds and guiding them to whatever ends we choose through our mental attitude. How can one control the mental attitude? The starting point of control of the mental attitude is motive and desire. No one ever does anything without a motive, or motives, and the stronger the motive, the easier it is to control the mental attitude. Mental attitude can be influenced and controlled by a number of factors, such as 1. By a burning desire for the attainment of a definite purpose based upon one or more of the 9 basic motives which activate all human endeavor. See the list of the 9 basic motives in Chapter 7. By conditioning the mind to automatically choose and carry out definite positive objectives with the aid of the 8 guiding princes, or some similar technique which will keep the mind busily engaged with positive objectives when one is asleep as well as when one is awake. See description of the nature of the 8 guiding princes in Chapter 4. 2. By close association with people who inspire active engagement in positive purposes and refusal to be influenced by negative-minded people. 3. By autosuggestion, through which the mind is constantly given positive directives until it attracts only that for which these directives call. 4. By a profound recognition, through its adoption and use, of the individual's exclusive privilege of controlling and directing his own mind. 5. By the aid of a machine by which the subconscious mind can be given definite directives while one sleeps. Such a machine is briefly described in Chapter 4. Our great American way of life, our matchless system of free enterprise, and the personal liberty of which we feel so proud, are nothing more than the mental attitude of people organized and directed to specialized ends. The one factor of the American way of life, which stands out boldly above all others, consists in the laws and mechanisms of government we have set up to protect the individual in the freedom of control over his mental attitude. It was this freedom of control over mental attitude which gave us the great leaders who patterned our American way of life and our great system of free enterprise. And it is significant that only those who moved with a positive mental attitude became leaders. Thomas A. Edison's positive mental attitude sustained him through more than 10,000 failures and led him to the discovery of the incandescent electric light, which ushered in the great electrical age and the fabulous riches it gave us. Henry Ford's positive mental attitude kept him afloat during his early struggles in building his first automobile, and it served as his greatest and most important asset in establishing the monumental industrial empire which made him richer than Croesus and provided employment, directly and indirectly, for perhaps more than 10 million men and women. Andrew Carnegie's positive mental attitude lifted him up from poverty and obscurity and served as his major asset in the establishment of an industry which gave birth to the great steel age, which now serves as the most important link in our entire economic system. Mahatma Gandhi's positive mental attitude, he called it passive resistance, was more than a match for the great power of the British military forces which ruled India for many generations. It was Gandhi's positive mental attitude which brought together a mastermind alliance of more than 200 million of his fellow men who gave mighty power to his passive resistance and freed India from British control without the firing of a gun or the loss of a single soldier. It was the positive mental attitude of the building of the magnificent Gold Gate suspension bridge which gave us the world's longest single-span bridge, despite the fact that his first attempt indicated that the job was an engineering impossibility. Wherever we find leadership and great achievement at any level of life, in any calling or occupation, we recognize that it is founded upon a positive mental attitude. A positive mental attitude is the sum total of hopes, wishes, and beliefs added up and transmuted into faith. And faith is the open door to infinite intelligence, which can be appropriated and used only by those who maintain a positive mental attitude. And the most profound fact regarding a positive mental attitude is that everyone has the privilege of adopting it and using it for all purposes, without money and without price. The secret by which this profound truth may enrich your mind and give you mastery over obstacles to happiness, which you may encounter the remainder of your life, has been revealed in the chapters which follow. Read with an open mind, and you will be rewarded with a form of riches sufficient to give you a well-balanced life, freedom from fear, and peace of mind, which shall endure. In the chapters which follow, you will be introduced to the greatest person now living. When you discover the name of this person, mark the page where the name was revealed and sign it, for you will have discovered a new meaning of the purpose for which we are on this planet for the brief span of years called life. In the chapters which follow, minute instructions have been presented for adjusting the mental attitude to eliminate the fear of dental or medical surgery. This chapter on mental attitude is a sort of preview which will prepare you to accept and use those instructions for the elimination of unpleasantness in connection with surgery or any other undesirable circumstances with which you may meet.